you brought up Chris Simon and playing over with him in the K, and I know I mentioned it earlier. So, like that, you played on a team over there that was famous for having all fighters, and you guys would just beat the shit out of teams. From my understanding, your owner was a lunatic, and he would come in the locker room with an AK-47. I might be putting a little bit more salt and pepper on this steak than I have to. How did you end up going to the K, and just talk about your experience over there, because it seems like it was a wild one.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, you hear all these negative stories about guys not getting paid enough or whatever, but to be honest, I have stories we could be here for the next 4 hours. I tell you,
perfect.
We never had any. I've made probably double what I was supposed to make when I was there, because I got bonuses for, when I flew across the ocean to fight Josh Gratton. People don't know about that story. When my daughter was born, I was given a big metal plaque that's solid gold. And when I fought that Evgeny Artukin it was and beat him up, I got a big bonus for that. Like I walked away with probably at least $100,000 in extra in cash from Russia. So I had no complaints. It was awesome, getting to play with Panarin, that's part of the story that you're probably going to ask me about the video Biz Nasty was,
so we got a lot of directions we can bring this. How were you originally recruited to go over there, and did you befriend that crazy owner? Can you talk about this guy a little bit?
Oh, I don't care. I'll talk about I talk about Jimmy Galante. I was with the Hells Angels. I was with the Italian Mafia. I was with the Mafia. I don't really give a fuck. But yeah, no, I actually had a couple opportunities prior to that year, but it was there's probably the years I was fighting you, Biz Nasty. I had a couple calls, but I still had that dream of trying to make the NHL. And Columbus was, believe it or not, promising me stuff. And even the next year when Z went to Tampa Bay, they were trying to take me there too, and I was too comfortable in Syracuse, and I didn't take some chances that I should have took. But so, anyways, the 1 year is when Anaheim took over in Syracuse. They kind of fucked me over, which is a whole other story, because there's emails I could show you from the NHL brass that were mad because I was too popular. They didn't like the idea that I was taking fame away from their draft picks and stuff. So that's when I kind of got fucked around in Syracuse, and they sent me to Fort Wayne, and I just kept going because they were paying me. I was making a good AHL salary, and I said, I'll go anywhere. I don't care. I'm not going to fight though. I was kind of being a hardhead like that. So then the following years, when I said, okay, well, I'm going to go to Russia. And just ironically, one of me and my best friends, Jeremy Oblonsky, was going there too. So I thought, well, what better way is it to finish off my hockey career going to play with Jeremy, So that's basically what it came down to. But I was offered a couple of years prior to that, and I just kind of, like I said, I still wanted to chase that dream. And now that I look back on it, I wish I would have went a couple of years earlier, because I ended up making NHL money when I was there, right? So, but that's kind of how I got to Russia. And then once I got there, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, like when you first landed, we're like a culture shock, obviously, but who did you meet? I don't know if we had.
It was Hennessy. Hennessy was on that team.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and they met him at the airport with a bunch of AK-47.
For another year.
Well, I can't remember. Shit, we're going back 10 years now, but I remember landing. We had to go to Riga, Latvia first, because we had to wait for our visas or whatever to get into Russia. So me and Yablonsky were in Riga for probably about, I want to say 2 or 3 days just waiting. And I remember thinking, fuck, this place is awesome. Because I don't know if you guys have been to Riga, but Riga's a nice European city, brick street wall, brick walls and brick streets, and nice clubs and nice hotels. And so I remember I got welcomed to Riga. I'm like, I'm going to love this. But then, when we finally got shipped to Moscow and then to Chekhov Vitas, and I was like, well, this place is a dump, but long story short, I have so many stories about over there, but I remember being in Chekhov after Riga, and we, in Russia, there's no NHLPA, so there's no rules they follow. You skate, work out, fight, and that's it. That's your life and sleep. And about 3 weeks in, I remember they said, you come to, it was about 4:00 in the afternoon. I was sleeping, having a nap, and some big guy come and knocked on my door, and he's like, I opened up. I was naked, so I think I wrapped a towel around me, and this big freaking Russian guy goes, downstairs, 5 minutes, boss man wants you. So I kind of didn't even know this guy. He's got a machine gun hanging on his arm. So I went and sat in the bed, and then not even 3 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's Yablonsky, and he's like, now, yeah, that guy came to my room too, and he's like, well, what do you do? I said, well, fuck, he's got a gun. Let's go. Anyways, long story short is we go downstairs, and when we walk downstairs, there's this big entourage of vehicles. It's just like the movies. There's, a cop car and a cop car, and then there's a couple SUVs. And so we walk up, and this little guy gets out, and he's just a little midget, and his name was Sasha. It was the boss man's son. He's like, hello, my father loves you guys. And his father's the owner. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, yeah, we're going to bring you to the village. It's called, it's this village that about 20 minutes out of town where his father lives. So anyways, long story short, we get in the vehicles and we follow this entourage out to the village. And when you get up, it's just like the movies, they have these guys with dogs and mirrors that walk around the cars and, make sure that there's no bombs or anything. And then whatever, we get let through the gate. And I mean, there's a Siberian tiger in a cage and there's horses over here. And I remember going, where the fuck am I? And whatever. So we pull up to the main cabin. And I mean, this place is like the movie. You ever guys watch the show Cribs where, you see all these famous people? Like this place should have been on Cribs. There was everything everywhere. So we pull up and then all of a sudden this little Russian guy comes walking out with a drobe on, and he's naked under the drobe. And he's just a little short guy. Like I'm short and he's shorter than me. And I mean, you guys probably know this. I got a guy, and I'm the kind of guy now, if I look at somebody, I could tell if they're tough by just looking at them. And I could tell when I looked at this guy, I'm like, I'm not going to fuck around with this guy. He's just, fat, weathered and big ears and just mean. But he ends up coming and he gives me a hug and he's like, I'm boss man. But he didn't speak English, right? He just said, I'm boss man. I love you. And he hugged me and, hugged all of us boys. It was the first time we ever met him. He's the reason we were there. And long story short is we drank like rock stars every night, or every that whole day. We were here, and here. And yeah, so we're sitting there watching all this stuff go on, and we're shit faced. I mean, they're pulling out machine guns, we're shooting, and we're drinking. One thing there is you don't drink, you don't ever party with women, eh? Like, young hockey guys want to see women, but the men drink and women are for after. So 4:00 in the morning comes by and we're loaded. And Sash's like, okay, well, you guys got practice tomorrow. You better go home. So they drive us home, and he says, there's a gift for you at home when you get back to the hotel. And I'll leave it at that for now.
My God.
Jesus Christ.
So
the Russian fembots got sent over.
I mean, that's just one out of about 10 stories. I mean, like there was,
you mentioned having to fly across the pond and then fight Josh Gratton that first game. What was that?
Well, that's not the first game. Well, what happened was about a couple of months, because Gratton, there's a backstory. This Gratton had played for the team I was on now, right? But he had moved to Astana, Kazakhstan. And I was kind of his replacement, me and Jeremy because actually both Chris Simon and Josh Gratton went to Astana. So then me and Jeremy went to Chekhov. So there was a big game coming up against Astana. And then that was the first game. Because like you said, there wasn't many tough guys in that league. And I didn't like it because I love fighting. And, you almost had to fight my own teammates to get into a fight against the other team because there's, but anyways, so there was my wife had our daughter Ava, and at that time I remember my wife was going through that postpartum thing, right? So I was in New York visiting my wife. I flew back, and then about a month later, my daughter was about a month old, and my wife was having a hard time coping with it. So I asked the boss man, I'm like, listen, my wife's struggling. Is there a way I can fly home to go help her for a week or whatever, just to get her back on her feet, and then I'll come back? And he said, well, there's a big game on, this was like Monday or Tuesday. He says, there's a big game on Friday. He says, but we have Kip Brennan, we have Yablonsky, we have Tarnowski. We'll be okay. You can go. So they let me fly from Moscow. I flew home. And this was probably like a Tuesday night or a Wednesday. Because you got to remember, there's a 12-hour difference, right? They're always ahead of us. So I landed in Syracuse because my wife was finishing her schooling there. And literally got there at like supper time. We went out for supper. We went home. I couldn't do the deeds because she was, 9, or she just had a baby. So I was just basically cuddling with my wife and, trying to help her. And she was happy that I was home. And then about 3:00 in that morning, I got a phone, because we used to use Skype. That's how we'd communicate when we were in Russia. So my Skype was going off at 3 a.m, and it was Yablonsky. He's like, Johnny, you got to get back. And I'm like, well, why? What happened? He says, did you watch the news tonight? Because that's when Kip Brennan and Yablonsky got that big league suspension. Remember when they got so he says, we're done for Friday. We can't play Friday. Like, you need to get back here because they want Josh Gratton to get fight. Like, they want you to beat up Josh Gratton. I'm like, well, fuck, man. I just landed here 8 hours ago. I just had supper with my wife and went to bed. He's like, it doesn't matter. Sasha's calling you. Answer your phone. So I hung up on Jeremy. Well, 3 minutes later, my Skype rings again, and it's Sasha now, that young boy that speaks English. And he's like, hey, Johnny, you hear what happened last night? You got to get back to Russia. And I'm like, fuck, I just got here from Russia. I just flew 13 hours on a plane. It doesn't matter. You got to be back here. So I'm at 4:00 in the morning. I'm on my computer looking for flights back to Russia because I have to be there by Friday, but it's already Thursday in Russia. And so I finally find a flight, but it's out of Rochester, New York, and I was in Syracuse. So I had to find someone to drive me from Syracuse to Rochester. I got on a plane in Rochester. I had to fly to LaGuardia. When I got to LaGuardia, I had to fly to Warsaw, Poland. And then when I got to Warsaw, Poland, and that's another thing. I called Sasha. I'm like, Sasha, because I'm a cheap fucker. I'll admit it. I'm like, this flight's like $8,000. I'm not going to pay that. He's like, just book it. Just book it. Don't worry. We'll make it up to you. Just book it. So I booked the flight. So anyways, when I got to LaGuardia, the big trip is going from LaGuardia to Warsaw, Poland to, because that's across the pond. But when I landed in Warsaw, it's Friday afternoon now, and I missed my connecting flight to Moscow. So I landed in Warsaw. I said, Sasha, I tried. I made it to Warsaw, but I missed my flight. He says, doesn't matter. You got to get here. So I went and talked to those, the service place. So they ended up getting me on a flight from Warsaw, Poland to St. Petersburg. And then from St. Petersburg, I made it to Moscow. So I landed in Moscow at like 5:30 p.m. And you got to remember, it's in Moscow's like New York City, right? On
I
a Friday.
Heard the traffic is like
it's insane. World. So anyways, I get to the airport in Moscow. Sasha's like, leave all your stuff. We'll get it later. Just get in the vehicle. There's vehicles outside waiting for you. So I run outside. You got to remember, I've been up for 24 hours now. I flew across the Atlantic Ocean to New York, flew all the way back within 2 days. And now but there's a league rule in the KHL that you have to be in warmups. You have to set foot on warmups to play in the game. So I get to the rink literally at like 7:15. The team's on the ice warming up. And I've been up for 30 hours. And I remember running in, and Jeremy and them are helping me get dressed. And because I got to get on the ice and do a couple laps. So I get on the ice, do about 2 laps, come off, and I fucking faint. And they're like throwing water on me. So then Andrei Nazarov and Alexei Zamna.
Oh yeah, we know Nazarov.
So I get called into the office now, right? I'm like, okay. So they call me in the office and they're like, how you feeling? I'm like, how the fuck do you think I'm feeling? I've been flying I flew twice across the Atlantic Ocean. And I said, he's like, okay. He starts giggling. He's like, well, you know what we want you to do? And I said, yeah. I said, first shift, get me out there. So sure enough, opening face-off, Josh Gratton starts the game. So I look at him and I jump on the ice and I look at Gratton. I'm like, let's fucking go. And he doesn't want to fight. But he doesn't know what I've just been through. Like I've been just flying for the last 40 hours. And I'm like, no, let's fucking go. And whatever, we end up fighting. Like I kind of force him into it. And you can watch the video. I dummy him pretty good. His eyes are completely, And then after the fight, I go back to the penalty box. I go to the penalty box, serve my penalty, go back to the box. I sit there for another 5 minutes. I look at Nazarov. I'm like, I don't want to be here. So the minute I seen Gratton get on the ice again, I jumped on the ice because there it's a 2-fight rule. So then a second fight, same thing. I just fucking open, it's a good fight, but I definitely got the better hand. So I was kicked out of the game. And then after that, I went and partied up with the boss man up in his suite for a day. And long story short, they flew me back to New York for 2 weeks with pay. And I got about a $80,000 bonus to cover all my expenses.
Jesus Christ.
So that's always probably my best.
That's a fucking story. Yeah.
So people watch the YouTube videos. Oh, that's a good fight, but they don't know the story behind that. Like I literally flew back and forth across just to do that.
When we're talking $80K bonus, are we talking the duffel bag nonsense? Was that happening all the time?
Just wads of hundreds like this. I used to play them on my bed and take pictures and send them to my buddies. Just like that Evander Kane. Remember the picture when he's in Vegas and he has a staff? Oh
yeah.
That's true. That's how you were. We got our direct deposit, but on the side you'd get big wads of hundreds.
So for you then, like what would you do? Did you have a bank there? Would you just hold it at home? Like when you traveled back after the season, were you traveling with like $600,000-700,000 in your baggage?
Oh, I don't think I ever carried. That wasn't that much of a big shot, but I'd carry, I think the most I brought was about $100,000.
If you need any help with TSA agents to get shit through, RA knows a bunch of them.